I'm running around doing errands right now, and I just kind of thought, well, you know what? Why don't I bring you guys with me, and I can share a story that I don't think I've told anybody. Well, if you watched our old videos, you know that I've told the story, but I haven't really explained myself. And the story is that I am not, nor have I ever been prior to the S550 Mustang, a fan of Mustangs. And I know that sounds a little bit funny because I have a Mustang, but that's because I wasn't always a fan of Ford's exterior designing or their interior designs for the longest time. The 90s Fords, well, really any American car in the 90s, it just had that nasty, weird tan plastic, the rounded off switches. Everything was just weird and ugly about the interiors of those cars. Prior to that, in the 80s, everything was boxy and also has the same kind of interior nasty nasty tan interior that I just didn't really like. And I mean, the Mustang's only been around since 1964 and a half. So obviously the classics, I appreciate the classics 100%. If I could, I would get behind the wheel of a 1965, 1967 fastback, any of those generation Mustangs. But just, I wasn't ever a fan of the Mustang 2. You know what? I'm developing an appreciation for the Fox body now, and the Terminator Cobra, the SN95 and the S197 and the New Edge and all those, I just wasn't ever really truly a fan of any of them. So why the S550, right? Well, when Ford was designing the S550, no one was, I mean, people thought it was gonna look like a Ford Fusion, but Mustang-fied, if that makes sense, you know what I mean? And there were a couple of concepts and renders that came out, and I think this was around 2013, at the end of it to 2014, you know, suggesting what the new S550 Mustang was going to look like, and no one really knew. And then finally, Ford finally came out and released an image for their upcoming Mustang. It wasn't Ford officially releasing it, you know, but what I think at least, is somebody leaked it the way that anything leaks nowadays. And it was probably obviously internal because it was a nice high quality image, but it was an image of the EcoBoost and it was the side profile. So when I first saw that picture, and I remember it because it was, I think I remember it because I remember seeing a mountain range in the back, and I remember seeing the silver car in front, no badging, no nothing. It didn't have the traditional Mustang sort of side scoop there on the behind the door right before the quarter panel. It didn't have any of that, so it really didn't scream Mustang at first. And I thought to myself, when I first saw this image, I said, damn, that is a really, really good looking BMW. Boy, was I wrong. It wasn't a BMW. Later, Ford confirmed that is the upcoming Mustang, and the image was actually of the EcoBoost, and they confirmed this by releasing image and specs of the 5.0. From that moment, I knew that car, I wanted that car, and I had to make it mine, and I did everything that I could to make sure that I saved up enough money so that when I graduated college, I would go to the dealership and buy my car. And it was a dream come true because that's exactly what happened. As soon as they confirmed that was the next Mustang, here's the thing, Ford is smart because they knew that if they wanted to not have to go through similar problems like with Chevy, where, you know, granted, the Mustang, now that I'm a part of this community, I understand it would never probably struggle through these sort of financial issues like the Camaro, but Ford knew that in order to reach new audiences, they had to change the design. And at the time, I remember when they were talking about this car and how they wanted it because it was the first Mustang, I think, in the history of the Ford Motor Company to release around the world at the same time. I could be mistaken on that. I'm not too sure about that, but I remember there being a lot of hype about this being a world-designed car, meaning, you know, it wasn't just a car to make the Americans happy. It was a car to make the Middle Easterns happy. It was a car to make, you know, the Asian countries happy. It was a car to make the European countries happy. Like, they took all of these people's preference for aesthetic and made it into what it is today. And here's the thing, because I also very vividly remember this car, the S550 Mustang, when it was first announced to the world, it was not well received by Mustang purists by any stretch of the imagination. No one liked this. Well, I don't want to say no one, because I was part of the group that did, but there were a lot of Mustang enthusiasts that didn't like the way that this car looked when it first came out. They felt, I think that the best way I can put it into words is they felt about this car the way that current S550 owners felt about the 18 refresh, in that it was a little bit weird, it was a little bit off, and then people saw it in person and then were like, holy crap, that is a good looking car. But it's just funny to me because, you know, I never saw myself behind the wheel of a Mustang until this car. I never had an interest for American muscle cars. I was always a tuner guy. My dream was always an R34 Skyline GTR, and I know that's like almost everybody who's a tuner, I know that's almost their dream, you know, because it's like that unobtainable, that forbidden fruit, you know, because you can get Supras here. Yeah, they're going to be expensive, but you can get Supras here. R34 Mustang, wow. R34 Skylines, no, you can't get R34 Skylines here, at least not as easily as you could get other cars. You know, I am part of this Fast and Furious generation. You know, Fast and Furious, I don't remember when the first movie came out. I'd say early 2000s, but that was the point in my time where I was starting to kind of find my, not necessarily my place, but find my liking in the world, find the things that I liked. And I was already playing car games. I was already playing Need for Speed Underground. I was already playing, what else did they have at the time? Midnight Club, all those video games. I was always spending more time customizing my cars and actually racing and finishing the story. I never really made it past, you know, the initial stories of those games, because I would always spend more time customizing and tweaking and modifying my cars, because that's what I found most enjoyable, you know, when I was coming into my car enthusiast life, you know. And Fast and Furious was around, and I would watch that, probably a little bit younger than I should have, but I did. And I don't know, it just kind of sparked this tuner thing in me where, you know, I grew a really heightened respect and appreciation for Japanese cars. You know, I can talk to you about Skylines, Supras, RX-7s. I can talk to you about, you know, Celicas, a lot of stuff. That's kind of how I found my path into cars, and I'm still at heart, deep down inside, a tuner guy. Like, I won't ever look at, I might tease a Honda here and there, but I won't ever talk or speak negatively about said Hondas. I'll definitely poke fun. I'll definitely tease. I've definitely fallen into that position where, you know, as a now an American muscle enthusiast, where I get to poke fun at Hondas. I do have a respect for the whole tuner scene. I do have a huge respect. Some of the tuner car shows that we've gone to, I'm rambling at this point. You know what? I can tell you a story about tuner shows another day. But for the purposes of just opening up to all of you and sharing with you something that people do ask me a little bit about it, some people don't, because some people just don't care, but to hear that a current Mustang owner was never a fan of previous Mustangs and then drives a Mustang now, to hear that kind of disconnect and how it was connected, like, I felt like that was kind of an interesting story. By the way, I think I'm driving next to Quentin Tarantino. So long story short, I decided that this was going to be the car for me after being anti-Mustang for a while there, and I ended up just working my way through college with support of my family, of course, 100%. Ended up making my way to get this car and to make it a reality. And I never imagined, and I remember the very first day that I got it, this was the car that I learned how to drive manual in, and I'll share that story with you guys in another video. But the very first day that I got this, I couldn't sleep, man. It was sitting in the driveway, and I knew that I had just, for the first time, I think, ever in my entire life. One, I just made the most adult purchasing decision of my life, so now I'm stuck with debt for a little while. And then two, something that I never thought I could ever have, I worked hard for, made happen, and was just sitting there in my driveway. I was overwhelmed. There's just no other word for it. I was 100% overwhelmed. And I remember this was my first stick shift car. I didn't know how to drive stick shift. So I remember wanting to take it out so bad, but I couldn't because I didn't know how to drive stick shift. So I had to teach myself how to drive stick shift, and I did it in this car. And I think just those moments of my early learning how to drive stick shift with the Mustang, I think are so valuable to me that's why I've grown to love this car and now have a Mustang story of my own to take with me for the rest of essentially my life. And I love it. And this car has so much heritage. It's got so much history. It's amazing to be a part of that. And now as an adult and as a fellow enthusiast and community member, I can see that and have an appreciation for it and just love it unconditionally. But that's gonna do it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little story of me and the Mustang, and stay tuned for more, because I just want to share and make more tell you more stories about me and cars. And yeah, so we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.